3, 4, and so on. And I'm going to be firm and say that if you're not going to be talking specifically about the amendments or objections or whatever, then I will stop you. I'm not going to have anything else rattling on, okay? I'm putting it as frankly as that. Thank you. We'll now go to R2 then, recommend 2. So is there any propositions or conversations or discussions or comments that wish to be made? So we'll take it to the vote. Good. R2. Read that, right? Well, R2, that the community expression of interest process is formally concluded with neither preferred partner being awarded a contract. All those in favour? We'll count them.
Now against.
Everything?
Yep. Okay.
All those against? Any abstentions? 1.
Point of order, Chairman. I've just been advised by a couple of residents the live stream has crashed, so I don't know if you want to look for that as well. So the people who are trying to actually listen to this meeting, thank you very much. I've just had it come through. Thank you.
Right, the result of that is 424 against 11 and abstention 1, so that is carried. We now go on to R3, that officers conduct a commercial soft market testing exercise for the operation of the cafe at the Mill Arts and Events Centre. Councillor Mrs. Gates.
Sorry. Can I ask for an amendment for a date for this market research to be concluded by, please?
Chairman, if I could just provide some advice. The amendment as expressed is not valid because it's not specific. So you would need to state the date rather than just saying, could we include a date by which it would be ended? Thank you, Chair.
In consultation with my colleagues, we're suggesting a 3-month period.
So, Chair, for clarity for members, the amended motion would read that officers conduct a commercial soft market testing exercise for the operation of the cafe at the Mill Arts and Events Centre to be completed within a 3-month period.
Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. In consultation with Phoebe, I would consider amending that down to 8 weeks, please. Phoebe,
On a point of order, please, the motion hasn't been seconded, so we can't talk to it.
apologies.
It's been seconded, you now can, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Phoebe, is that going to be possible within 8 weeks?
I would recommend that you keep with the 3 months in order to make it meaningful, just because of resources internally and holidays. I'd say if we want to amend to keep to 3 months, that's
accepted, and thank you for your advice.
Sorry, I just confirmed that the 3 months is an achievable rather than the 8 weeks, and I would recommend that we would stick with the 3 months for resource purposes, holidays of staff and that as well, to make it a meaningful engagement.
Councillor Mrs. Bell.
Thank you. And thank you to Councillor Wilson for suggesting the earlier period, great sentiment. knowing how difficult it was to go out in the first instance and get interest, I think that's why we'd all probably like to see a date on it so that we can guarantee some attention is given to it, because there's been cries from the public for quite some time, as we know, and we certainly felt them to get the cafe open. So we'd welcome anything we can do to support that from this side of the room as well.
Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, just to confirm, I won't be supporting the amendment. I believe that will slow down the process.
Right, members, we have an amendment and a proposition, so we'll take a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? No?
Are you now against?
Thank you, members. All those against? 3. Thank you, members. Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
What about yourself, Jack? What about yourself, Chairman? Are you voting?
I'm against. Thank you.
21 for, 4 against, 11 abstentions. It's carried.
Members, it's 21 for, 4 against, 4 abstentions and 11 against.
4 against.
4 against, 11 abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you. Members, those recommendations have been substantiated, so we now don't need to re-vote on the amended R2, as it was. R3, sorry. So we need to now vote on that recommendation as amended. So, right, so we've now amended it, so we're now voting on the full. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Would you be so kind as to read out the amendment, please? Amended motion. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm happy to read that out again. So the amended recommendation 3 now reads that officers conduct a commercial soft market testing exercise for the operation of the cafe at the Mill Arts and Events Centre to be completed within a 3-month period. Thank you, Chair.
Members, we now have this new motion. We'll take a vote on that then, as amended. All those in favour of that motion? Thank you, members. Those against? None. Any abstentions? Members, that's 27 for, none against, and 9 abstentions. Thank you. That's carried. We now take the R4. The budget of 6,500 is allocated to support the reopening of the bars for events at the Mill Arts and Event Centre. The bar is to be operated by a third party, Eternity Events, as per Appendix 1, which is exempt. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
Apologies, Chair. This is a very minor amendment that I hope my colleagues would support. As it stands, the motion reads that a budget of 6,500. I believe it should say up to 6,500 because the exempt appendix, and I've checked with officers that I can speak to this because I'm not talking about any of the commercial information, but the partner has stated they would happily contribute and oversee that £6,500 worth of improvements. So I'm not sure why we are paying the full £6,500 to a commercial offering when he's already offered to contribute. So I would just like to see it say up to, for the purpose of clarity and to allow officers to negotiate accordingly to get the best possible deal for the Mill Hall and taxpayers. I would also just like to add, because it's not clear in the report, some of the items that are stated within that £6,500, will we be getting those from third parties at no cost, such as the glasses, which typically you see brands give to venues such as this? So just to ensure that we're getting the absolute best value for money. But to be clear, I support the motion. I would just like to see it say up to, if possible. Thank you.
Councillor, Mr Mason.
And then Wilson.
Just an observation, Chairman. Been in finance for quite some time. Budget actually infers that this is variable. The fact that there's an end figure on the budget infers it's variable up to anyway. So I'm not going to support that either, because it doesn't go against the good sense of accountancy and financial practice.
Councillor Mrs Wilson, did you want to speak?
Hello, Chair. Yes, I did, but following on from what Councillor Mason has just said, no, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whilst I don't disagree with the explanation Councillor Mason has given, a very clear one, what I would say is this council on many of occasions have asked us to change the wording right across the board of up to for absolute clarity, because a number of people have read that we will be spending £6,500 when it's not necessary. Thank you.
Chairman, point of order. Councillor Belton never had her amendment seconded.
Councillor Steptoe.
I'm happy to second that.
Anybody else? Right, so we're...
They are objecting to this up to, but the next report says that a budget of up to £10,000 is allocated. So I don't see why this one can't say to up to as well.
Can we stick to this motion at the moment, please, and we'll go on to that?
That is, I'm just saying it's up to on the next motion. So why can't this one be up to? Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Well, Chairman, according to the Constitution, without the amendment being actually seconded, it failed. So that debate was unnecessary and it has failed.
Right, we have a proposition in for an amendment on this particular item, so we're going to put it to the vote. So all those in favour of the amendment of this financial difference, you know, the variable as suggested by Councillor Belton. All those in favour? Thank you, members. All those against? Against. Any abstentions? One. Right, there's 15 for, 20 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, that has been declined. That's failed. So we go back to the original recommendations then for R4, and that is that a budget of 6,500 is allocated to support the reopening of the bars events at the Millwall Event Centre. The bar be operated by a third party, Eternity Events, as per Appendix 1, which is exempt. All those in favour?
Can we speak to that motion then, please? We spoke to the amendment before. We haven't spoken to this motion.
Unless you, yeah, go on then. We'll listen to what's being said. Everybody has a say.
Thank you. The end of that item says Appendix 1, which is an exempt item. I haven't had sight of that item. I've been on holiday in Germany with very limited internet access. I turned up this evening and I asked for the exempt papers, which they haven't been provided to me. So I don't even know what that exempt item is all about. So therefore, I'm wondering how we can vote on it, if not, maybe not everybody has read it.
It's your problem.
Summons.
Chairman, I'm happy to provide advice as monitoring officer on this item. The papers have been published within the legal deadlines. If any member feels that they haven't accessed that information and been able to digest that and use that to inform their decision, then they should abstain in the vote. Thank you.
Well, that makes it clear. So we now take the vote. All those in favour of that recommendation?
Lots of hands up. Good lad.
Thank you, members. Those against? Any abstentions? 3.
That's carried.
Members, we have 33 for, none against, and 3 abstentions. That is carried. We're now going to go on to R5, that the budget of up to £10,000 is allocated for a structural survey of the Mill Arts and Events Centre. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I do take on board the opening comments from our Chief Exec. I am very concerned about the survey. I know that a number of surveys over many years have been carried out on this particular building. But with a view to what's happened recently and the fact that the government have changed the goalposts on this RAAC concrete over the last few days, I don't believe that the surveys that we have had done in the previous occasions have necessarily had that in mind. The goalposts have been changed quite considerably. I know today, having been to other meetings in other places, that there is a lot of concern about schools, hospitals, and civic buildings right across the board, to the extent I happened to bump into the Secretary of State for Schools in the car park today, and I know she's particularly worried about this as an issue. So I am going to propose that we need to tighten up the specification of the survey that is being talked about here. I feel that it should include a thorough inspection, particularly for the rack concrete and also concrete cancer, which is 2 different things. Also, as well, the possibility of asbestos. You have to bear in mind that
Point of order, Chair, please.
One moment, Mr. Councillor. Councillor, Mr. Doyle.
I'm really very sorry to do this, but this isn't on topic as to what we should be discussing. Thank you. Yeah, we're discussing the budget up to £10,000 for a structural survey, not the RAC.
Structural survey, Chairman. Just say structural survey, and that's what I'm referring to. Can I continue? Thank you, Chairman. And as I say, in particular, asbestos. I know from experience that asbestos can be very prevalent in this particular building, bearing in mind when it was actually built, which is the early 70s. I'd also like to see the structural survey include other items as well. The heating, for example, and the administration is very keen on environmental standards and how the environment is working. I wouldn't mind betting that the heating system in here is considerably out of date.
Oh, sorry, on a
Well,
point of
yeah.
order, Chairman, we are talking about structural surveys. Sustainability of the building is also mentioned in the report, and that's also taken care of through other committees. This is about a structural survey.
If I can continue, Chairman, I was going to say, as part of the structural survey, we need to be looking at the way the heating system is integrated within the structure, particularly the air conditioning, and see how that works. Speaking personally, I have quite a concern about stuff that's all over our heads. You in particular, Chairman, how safe is all of that? Structurally, how safe is all that equipment that's hanging off of that roof? You're sitting under a considerable amount of stuff there. So I would like to see that included within this instruction, the structural survey. I was going to mention the fact that the lift hasn't worked for months, but...
Councillor Steptoe, could I remind you of the time?
Yes, certainly, Chairman. Having said that, all of the above, I believe that the budget of £10,000 will not be anywhere near sufficient to carry out those full assessments. And I would like to propose that the officers take this away, look at what I've said, include the items that I've said, and advise on a revised budget to take this forward. And I believe that should be done within a 3-month period. That's my proposal, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Mason first. I'm taking them in order.
Chairman, I would like to call for a seconder on that first, so we don't have any further confusion.
Thank you. You've had to say, we'll take Councillor.
What is it? For?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not clear what the amendment actually is that Councillor Steptoe is proposing at this moment in time. However, what I've heard seems to suggest a negation to the existing recommendation, which would not be allowed as an amendment. Essentially, I think, Councillor Steptoe, you're proposing that you don't vote or you defer this item so that officers can go away and look at a more complete recommendation around what's contained in that structural assessment, structural survey, and revisit the budget. So it's not an amendment, it's potentially a motion to defer.
Chairman, if I may, I'll take the officer's advice on that particular point and take on board what she has said and look for it to be deferred on the basis that I have already said.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Wood.
No, John Mason.
Yeah,
We've got a second here.
I needed a seconder first, didn't I?
Thank you, Chairman. For the sake of avoidance of any doubt, I would like to second it, and I will await my turn in due course to come back later in the debate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I seem to be coming back to process quite a lot, I suppose, because that's the life that I had in the financial services industry. Surely, when we write in council that we're talking about a structural survey, then there are already definitions within the local government sector as to what a structural survey actually means, and more particularly around the procurement of such a survey. So I find it unnecessary to take something back to officers to specify a set of terms and conditions for a structural survey when indeed those things are already laid down. I'm content to vote for a structural survey knowing that our officers have those rules and those definitions and those industry standards to actually fall back on. I don't know why these amendments, which are almost semantics, are coming forward.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman.
as already been mentioned by Councillor Mason, the structural survey will be carried out by government approval of their recommendations. Now, whether there is RAC in this building, whether there is asbestos or anything else, the survey will tell us exactly what we need to know. Whether it is sufficient, we can only get the experts to do that. It's obvious that that Councillor Steptoe is an expert on these structural surveys from what he's mentioned. So let's have him to do the structural survey. Thank you.
Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. I'd remind the council that it wasn't that long ago that we had a condition survey done of this building, and included in that was the heating and recommendations on the heating. So I don't see any point in going over that again. As far as the structural survey itself goes, any surveyor who is worth his salt will be taking into consideration anything that is current that should be looked at. And I would suggest that RAC is something that would be very high on their list to make sure that they do actually cover that. Any structural survey that is done as well would naturally cover any inclusion of any suspicion of there being asbestos in the building. One thing that worries me about the amendment that has been put forward is that it's going to delay the procedure yet again. So if that is the case, could I suggest that if this motion is taken up, that we actually put an additional amendment to the amendment that once the cost of the survey has been confirmed, that it be ratified and approved by the chairman and by the leader of the council to avoid any future delays. Thank you.
Chair, I can answer that one with a reasonably straightforward answer. No, you can't make that amendment because the motion is to defer. So you can't amend a motion to defer with additional information.
Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. The reason I'd like this to be deferred is because the sentence is up to £10,000, and in my opinion, I can't see where £10,000 would go in a structural survey. I'm particularly concerned about the roof because there might be things we want to put on top of it. You mentioned sustainability, and once you start, if you have to start working on that, you're looking at touching the fabric of the building. So I'd like to know what's actually in the fabric of the building connecting to the roof. So I just don't think £10,000 would do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belton.
Thank you, Chairman. Listening to what people have said, I mean, I work in the construction industry. Structural surveys vary, and they vary dependent on the scope of work. The fact that we're having to resurvey schools at the moment shows us that very fact, that something was surveyed a year or two ago was surveyed for one set of criteria. There's now a difference. So the scope of work is actually very important. It's for this council to determine what they want to procure within that survey. So that's my first point. I think this recommendation is slightly too vague. The second point is I agree with my colleague, Councillor Efty. I'm not convinced £10,000 is going to cut it. It may have done 6 months ago, but the cost of these surveys has gone through the roof. Excuse the pun. Because of what's going on with the schools, supply and demand has meant that the cost has literally shot up, as well as the delay in getting these surveys carried out. So my question would be, if we cannot procure a surveyor to carry out the scope of work that the council agrees, what happens? Because there's only a budget of up to £10,000. So actually, I think Councillor Steptoe's amendment or motion to defer is possibly a sensible one, and one that will allow this survey to come to fruition quicker, because a more thorough recommendation can come forward to show what it's going to include, how much it's going to cost, and what the time frame is on getting a surveyor to actually carry it out, because all of those things I have concerns with at the moment. So that's why I support Councillor Steptoe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Belton has made the point I was going to make. £10,000 to me seems to be pretty insignificant due to looking at recent effects. I happen to know that the survey at Keenham School was far in excess of £80,000 for a full structural survey. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I can now see why this laid with the Conservative administration for so many years with nothing actually happening. The officers have given us advice. They are experts in this area. They have said £10,000. I think we've discussed it quite a lot. And can we move to the vote, please?
I'm going to make this.
That was a
the last
motion
one.
to move to the vote, actually.
Constable.
So I think I'll have a seconder for that.
They want to move it to the vote.
Councillor Constable, you were speaking.
On a
Thank you,
point of
Mr.
order,
Chairman.
Chairman, I've put a motion forward and you haven't allowed a seconder to it.
We haven't finished speaking on the motion.
But I've put a motion, so we have to vote on the motion to put it to a vote.
Please. Councillor Hoy, you sat down, you stood up, then you stood up. So I'm going to take it in that order. Councillor Constable, then we'll go back to Councillor Hoy.
I'd like to ask the officer where the figure of £10,000 came from. Did they go out to any companies for estimates, or is this just a figure that's been generically done? And without a full estimate of costs, I can't see how we can vote on it. Therefore, I'm in favour of the amendment.
Thank you. I'm going to take Councillor Wotton now. If you would make a second the motion, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I'm tempted to make some cheap comments about semantics, about up to or a budget of or whatever, but I will avoid that. Our decisions come from informed comments in a report. So if I can take members to 3.6.2, it says a structural survey needs to be completed. It goes on to say officers will procure a condition survey that will look at the need of investment required, but focus on exploring options on how to decarbonise the building, at what cost and what opportunities. I quite understand, and particularly over the last few days, can understand why, before putting significant investment into this building, people would want an assurance that it was structurally sound. But I take members back to a series of emails that existed between our own in-house surveyor, an external surveyor, which conducted a structural survey this time last year. I think the item that I've just referred to is particularly vague, because you're not going to get a structural survey of this building for £10,000, or dare I say up to, or a budget of. So we don't really know what the heck we're talking about in this recommendation. We need to understand in definitive terms what we actually want. And I don't think that is actually unreasonable for us to understand what it is that we're going to get for our money. If it is to look at the roof structure, as has been mentioned to me, with a view to putting solar panels on the roof in a conservation area, that may be a possibility. But let us understand what it is that we're getting for a structural survey, because £10,000 in today's market won't buy you very much. So actually I would appeal to officers not to put us in a situation as politicians where we don't have a degree of precision about what it is that we're actually voting on. So that is why I totally support Councillor Steptoe in his deferral proposal, because all we are asking is to understand what it is in terms of a structural survey. Is it to dig down the foundations? Is it to look at concrete? Is it to look at the sustainability of this building? What is it to do? And then we could actually come up with some sort of figure, and actually there would be universal agreement across the chamber, because we would all want that assurance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think enough's been said. I think they're very opinionated views, so good or bad. So the thing is, we're going to take a vote. So all those in favour of the deferment put forward by Councillor Steptoe, please indicate.
Or ask the question of the officer as to the extent of which inquiries had been made around the £10,000 up to budget. And I don't think I heard an answer. So I don't want this put to a vote till I've heard that. And I'd like the officer to explain, please, what steps were taken to come to that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We have approached an independent surveying company who have provided us with a quotation of £10,000 to carry out the works. The works is to focus primarily on the roof, on the matter around if it was to go over £10,000. We have asked for a budget, we can go out and procure that work. If it was for more than that, we would then be coming back anyway to say. So if we are in a position where we can just progress to get the works procured, we would then come back if it was more than the £10,000.
So members, you've had an explanation here, so we can vote on whether or not to defer for the amendment as put by Councillor Steptoe, or we refuse. So all those in favour of the...
No, sorry.
What do you mean, no, sorry?
I would like to speak. I'm sorry, Phoebe, you've just said up to 10,000, primarily focusing on the roof. And this is a structural survey. So can you just clarify, the 10,000, is that primarily for a structural survey on the roof and doesn't take into account all the areas that Councillor Steptoe has mentioned?
Yes, I can confirm it is a structural survey of the roof. As previously mentioned, we have had surveys done in the past, and also our internal surveyors who have looked at the likes of concrete cancer and asbestos in the walls and that as well. So we are taking on all the work that has been done today, and we are focusing primarily on the roof because that is where we believe we have not got as much information as what we need in order to progress moving this building forward.
So can I just understand, this is not a full structural survey, this is a structural survey on the roof. You're gathering information from previous surveys conducted by the previous administration, and you're putting all the previous surveys and the conditional survey together to come up with your overall condition of the building in terms of its structure.
Yes, the £10,000 is to focus on the structural survey of the roof.
Can I ask for amendment that reads structural survey on the roof?
I think enough's been said, and you can form your own opinions, right? So we're going to go to this vote, and don't want any interruptions. We're going to go to this vote as put forward by Councillor Steptoe, and it's been seconded by Councillor Wooden. So all those in favour of a deferment for further detail, please indicate now. Thank you. All those against? Abstain. Thank you, members. Any abstentions? Two at the back. I'm abstention. Members, there's 11 for, 23 against, and 2 abstentions. So that has been refused. So we go back to the original motion as put before, R5, that the budget set up by 10. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Therefore, just for clarity, could we have a small amendment to that recommendation saying that it is a structural survey of the roof of the Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre, Chairman, if I have a seconder.
Second that.
Councillor Gadsden.
I'd like to thank you, Joe.
What's she saying?
Christine Mason.
Councillor Christine Mason. Mrs. Christine Mason.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused because I thought that the clarity given by the officer and the clarity in the report, I can't understand why it seems very simple to me, and yet the members on the other side seem to have such difficulty. Item 362, a structural survey needs to be completed on the building, taking account of the building condition survey completed in September 22. By implication, that's the previous information. Officers will prepare a condition survey, look at the need of the investment required, but also focus on exploring options to decarbonise. Now, I admit it doesn't say the roof, but you have all seen the original condition survey. So if the only thing outstanding is the roof, what we're doing here, the suggestion is to pick up the missing bits. And that's all that's for. So that's a structural survey. If we put roof in, you're restricting it to just the roof. If they look at the roof and they find they need to look at something else, then obviously we need them to do that. So I really think that this motion is straightforward, it's a budget, and it should be approved. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. My main reason for simply adding roof would be to speed things up, as I'm sure that people would then hopefully support it. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd also like to add, we've got some new councillors from this year who would not have seen the surveys completed in September 2022. So could I ask that the officers actually send them out to all the councillors? Because some councillors have not seen them. Thank you. So it's difficult to make an informed decision.
Thank you. Right.
So now you've got another amendment to vote on recommendation 5.
So we've got this amendment on.
I second the amendment, Chairman. Nobody seconded it.
All right. Right. So that amendment has been. So could you repeat the amendment, please?
Chairman, quite simply, it was literally to add the word roof after structural survey of the roof of the Mill Arts and Event Centre. Only for clarity, only to speed this up. And that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. May we take a vote then, members? All those in favour of that amendment? Thank you, members.
Those against?
Those against? Thank you, members. Any abstentions? One abstention.
One.
Yeah. Members, that's 12 for, 23 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, that amendment's lost. So we go back to the original amendment. Original the proposal. Councillor Efty.
Chairman, I have a question for the officer. Is there, I'm looking through the report, sorry. I'm looking through the report, but I can't see a timescale on these surveys. I might have missed it.
Following approval of the budget, we will go out to procurement straight away. Sorry, I've got a mint in my mouth. We'll go out to procurement straight away, and it will be dependent on quotes, timescales of the independent surveyors as well, but it will be carried out as soon as possible, that I can reasonably do.
Therefore, we're now going to vote on R5 then, that the budget of up to £10,000 is allocated to a structural survey of the Millwall Arts and Event Centre. All those in favour? Thank you, members. Those against? Thank you, members. Any abstentions? Cool.
6, 2, 4, 6 abstentions.
Thank you, members.
Can you give your figures?
Members, that is 24 for, 6 against and 6 abstentions. So that's carried. We're going to R6 now then, that the draft market research objectives are approved, enabling officers to proceed, procure and conduct the research. Councillor Esdy.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I've got a slight amendment, if that's...
Number 6, R6.
Number 6, yeah. Reading where it says that the draft market research objectives and a budget, could we ask the officers if they've got any idea what this would actually cost? Because looking at the objectives, and the amount of people they want to go and ask questions of across the district, it could be quite a lot of money. And I'm not saying we shouldn't spend the money because we need to be informed, but just like some idea what it would cost. And I'd like to recommend, so it's like a recommendation of a budget of 50k.
Thank you.
Currently, as proposed at the previous executive in March, there's a budget allocated of 25,000, which is being funded from the Community Investment Plan Reserve.
Councillor Mrs Belton.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at the objectives on page 7.6 and 7.7, they're quite specific now, and we talk about going to around 2,000 people, I believe, across the whole district. Can I ask, essentially, what are we looking for that we didn't get before from research that was done, from research that was put in from Save the Mill Hall? The independent guy, Colin, I apologise, I can't remember the organisation that he was from, but he gave a big report on what the Mill Hall usage should be. I wonder what we're looking for. And obviously, the further east we go into the district, the further the views will vary from what people want to use the Mill Hall for, which gives me concerns. And point 6 within the objective is explore other potential opportunities and uses for the site, which brings me right back to recommendation 1A, where I had concerns about the word community being omitted, because this implies if the research comes back and it's not favourable to keeping the Arts and Events Centre for arts, events and community, we could be back with something completely different on the table. So a little bit of reassurance as to what, why and when would be helpful. And if the original 25k budget that was set is still significant, given that we want to do the entire district and reach at least 2,000 people. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody want to, do you want to make any comments? No?
So the purpose of the markets research, which we've suggested, will take into account all the research that we have had done to date. But following the EOI process, it was very clear that the two preferred partners, there was a lack of information we as a council was able to give them in a direction of travel for this building. Therefore, the purpose of the market research is highlighted under 3.54, the research objectives, and supports the objectives that have been set in recommendation 1A, which is to focus primarily on this building being an arts and events centre and how we make that a successful arts and events centre, reducing the financial how the council is subsidising this building, because currently we are subsidising this building financially by hundreds of thousands, and it's not sustainable for the long term. So the purpose of this market research is to gather and inform as much information as possible to present a strong business case going forward for financiability. And there may be some difficult questions or scenarios that can come out of that, but that is presented to members to make that judgment.
Councillor Mrs Belton.
Thank you, Phoebe. So if I may just come back, just to confirm, because explore other potential opportunities and uses for the site, does that mean any other opportunities and uses for the site? Because that's, again, how it reads, and this is just about clarity and making sure we're voting for the right thing. Thank you.
No, so it's not a broad what options could there be. Obviously, the objectives have been set. It's the primary focus is to arts and events centre. So it's how do we bring arts and events back into this building? How do we get not only the residents of this district, but other boroughs and that coming into Rayleigh, bringing in that tourism, bringing in that support, to bring in that financial, commercial kind of arm around it to help subsidise what we are putting on from this building.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that, Councillor Belton, I understand where you're coming from. However, this is a really important piece of work. This will be the first time this number of our community will have been reached in such a wide area, which is why my comments to start off with, I talked about reaching a really wide and all-inclusive demographic. You are quite right, we won't be excluding anybody. However, what we really, really need to do is to make sure that we know how our residents are going to support this building long-term so that we can get this right and have this building financially sustainable, not just for the council, but actually for the residents. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Wilson refers there to the demographic and those that are going to be surveyed. Can I ask how extensive that survey will be? Will it include those people that live in places like Fowness or Great Wakering, who very rarely have the opportunity to use this facility here, but of course will have to be paying for it out of their rates? So I'd like some clarification as to does Mrs Wilson, Councillor Mrs Wilson, mean that it's just the local area, the greater area, or the whole district? Can we have some clarification on that, please?
Councillor Mrs Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. In response to Councillor Steptoe, as I said in my opening ramble, and actually it's in the report that because we want to reach so many and such a wide area, we don't just want people from Rayleigh who can jump on the bus or manage to get up Crown or London Hill to walk here to see us. So in answer to your question is, I cannot guarantee every resident in Great Wakering will be surveyed. However, the whole point of having this market research done in such a wide area that has never been done before, certainly as far as Mill Hall is concerned, is to make sure we get as many opinions as is possible to make this a success. That is our sole focus. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. It's obvious that our ward councillors can explore what the Mill Arts and Events Centre is for. And it's for our ward councillors to promote what Rochford Council does in their areas. And I would suggest that Councillor Steptoe should start promoting just that. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I think we've had a long discussion on this, and I think the point's been well raised, and I think now we should take a vote. And we have a motion on the floor, and I'll repeat it for you, that the draft market research objectives are approved, enabling officers to proceed and conduct the research. Now, all those in favour of that, please indicate.
It was a substantial motion. I gave a budget of 50,000.
And you didn't ask for a second?
Again.
Okay, put your hands down. And what do you do? You've got. Are you putting a proposal in on this particular vote? Right. Have I got a seconder?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Sperring. Right, we now take a vote. All those in favour? No. Councillor Mason.
Point of order, Chairman. Come on. You can't have a situation where we put a motion to debate and discussion, and then at the end of it, we discover that we haven't seconded it, but we'll just suddenly second it. That's not acceptable. As I said earlier, the motion failed. It is not to be put.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Members, please, I'm taking advice from the MO, and we'll get.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and apologies, members and those watching for the brief pause there while we just consulted amongst the statutory officers. Councillor FD, apologies, it wasn't clear that you were proposing that as an amendment. I've just consulted with the Section 151 officer. There is a budget already in existence for this work of £25,000. I've been advised that if the council wishes to move that's increased to £50,000, that is possible. There are reserves or alternative budgets that could be used to fund that additional 25,000, subject to the council's approval. Thank you, Chair. Need a second.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I have a raging headache tonight. I don't feel particularly well, and I would like a glass of water. But what I take great exception to is the outburst of behaviour by the leader, who frankly should know better, and slamming his hands down on the desk is not becoming to graceful behaviour. And I really ask you to seek an apology for that unnecessary outburst. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, what is unnecessary are the series of amendments that have been brought forward, which are singly about filibustering. So,
point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Right, gentlemen, members, please, let's all sit down now, and then let's get back to where we were. Thank you, Mr. Mason. I'll take your point. Please sit down.
Thank you.
Right, we will now get on with the matters in hand, and we're going to go back to R6. Now, can you just enlighten me? Well, did we have a proposal?
We have a proposal from Councillor FD, but we need a seconder.
Councillor Sperrin seconds the motion. Therefore, we will now take...
Sorry, can I make a point of order? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to disagree with this. Councillor FD mentioned £50,000. He did not get a seconder. We have spent the last 10 or 15 minutes debating R6, the motion, on the paper. You can't, when we're going to put that, suddenly take an amendment. The amendment was not put in a timely fashion. It was not correct. So I would like that checked, because if Councillor FD had had a seconder, we would have been speaking to his amendment, but we weren't. We were speaking to the substantive motion. Then we asked for that to be put, and then all of a sudden we find a seconder. That is an unacceptable way of conducting business.
Mr. Chairman, if you will indulge me again to just advise the council. I completely take on board Councillor Mrs. Mason's point, but I think what we have here is an unfortunate case of a misunderstanding that the intention was to propose an amendment. And Chair, I think in the interest of fairness, that amendment should be now taken, given that Councillor FD has pointed out that he intended it to be treated as an amendment to the recommendation.
Right, I'll take the advice of my mentoring officer. Councillor FD, so you've put that proposal. Can you just repeat that again, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal was that the draft market research objectives and a budget of £50,000 are approved, enabling officers to proceed with the conduct of research.
And your seconder? Councillor Sperrin. So we've got the proposal then that sorry, can you repeat it again so that we can vote clearly? What is your proposal?
Okay, Chairman, that the draft market research objectives and a budget of 50k are approved, enabling officers to procure and conduct the research.
Right, we have a proposal and a seconder.
Oh, we've done that.
So we can vote on that.
Yeah, they're all putting their hands up. So we'll take a vote now. So, okay, Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking to the amendment that's just been put. I won't be supporting that amendment, Chairman. That figure's just been plucked out of the air. The 25,000 has been fully costed. The 50,000, I don't know where that figure's come from, but that's just reckless financial mismanagement. Thank you.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. When that £25,000 budget was set back in March, I believe, we didn't have this set of objectives that covered such a vast amount of research. a vast amount of research that we wholly support. I think councillors before have brought it up in ONS that market research needs to be done. Valuable and constructive market research needs to be done. Now, I also understand from conversations with officers and others that that includes the council's cultural offering to enable the Mill Hall to look at grants and future opportunities. And it also, officers said that the partners needed more market research. We formally concluded with the partners, yet we're taking the advice for the more market research. It's a bit conflicting, but the reason that £50,000 has been suggested is because it's our belief from our conversations and our research that to do this properly, £25,000 won't cut the 6 objectives that have been set here. It may have cut the market research that we originally planned to do back in March, but this administration wants to do more. We support that. We support taking that research far and wide, but we don't think £25 is going to see the results that this administration want. So that is why it's not plucked out of the sky, it's thoughtful, and it was an amendment that was made originally and secondly.
Very good. Well, now we've got the proposal. We've had a full understanding of why this proposal has been suggested. So we're going to take a vote, and I'm going to take a vote. So all those in favour of that amendment by Councillor Efty? Thank you. All those against?
You're sticking your hand up, get your hand up, Jack.
Thank you, members. Any abstentions? None. Members, that's 411, against 25, and abstention 0. So that has been turned down. We now go back to R6 as the original. That the draft market research objectives are approved, enabling officers to proceed and conduct the research. Move that from the floor. Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just ask a question of the officer? Like on the last motion, will the officer come back to full council if they need more money?
Yes, if it's outside the budget, I'd come back to council.
I haven't got a seconder yet, have I? So,
Got questions. There's a question.
Right.
We don't need a second.
so we've already debated all of this.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to go over the same territory. I'll give Mr. Steptoe one more go, and then we're going to call a vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm still very concerned about who is going to be surveyed. In the documentation somewhere it says around 2,000 people. We do have 86,000 people within our district. And I'm very concerned that the people down the eastern end of the district, whether that be Canoonan or Paglesham, Great Wakering or wherever, are simply going to be left out of this particular situation. So I'm very concerned about that. And I'd like some assurance that this will be carried out throughout the whole district, and anybody that wants to give an opportunity to respond to this survey has the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. We'll now take a vote. So we'll take a vote then. So, Councillor Newport.
I just want to reassure Councillor Steptoe that I'm sure part of this will be done online and that will reach worldwide. So I'm sure it will reach Canoonan and Great Wakering. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, you've all heard what's been said. You've got your opinions. We can carry it out by vote. So all those in favour of that proposition?
To read it out.
That the draft market research objectives are approved, enabling officers to proceed and conduct the research, which is the original motion. So all those in favour of that?
I think that's unanimous, actually. That's
Thank you,
unanimous.
members.
It's unanimous.
Those against?
It's all unanimous, that was.
Any abstentions? Unanimous. Members, that was unanimous. Right, we go on to R7, that the following the conclusion of the market research, engagement, activity and structural survey options for the future operation of the Mill Hall and Event Centre are presented back to the full council with a full supporting business case. Councillor Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one point, page 7.7, 3.6, 6.6.3, can we please have it amended to spring 2024, not sprint? Because I don't think we're going to be in a sprint race. Thank you.
Okay, down ticks.
Spring of 74. Oh, I see. Typing error. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
Would it be possible for that date to be put within the motion rather than just within the report? Because again, the recommendation is there, but there's no time frame on it and it just feels open-ended. There's a suggestion in the report to spring 24, but why not put it in a recommendation so we have some definition on when we're likely to see that?
Do you want to put that as an amendment?
I'm happy to ask my colleagues first, because if they're happy to change it, I'll accept that. It's just, this is about getting things done.
Right. Councillor Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. The reason why, and I'm really sorry, Councillor Belton, actually I don't want a date in there, is because I'm really hoping we can come in before that. The intention is to certainly not come in any later than that, which is why the date is in the report. Personally, I don't think it needs to be on the amendment, because I don't want anyone dragging their feet and saying to me, but it says we don't have to do it till spring 24. Thank you.
Councillor Hoy.
I don't need to speak now. Councillor Mrs. Wilson said what I was going to say.
Councillor Mrs. Belton.
Thank you. I do accept Councillor Vilma Wilson's response. All I will say is by having it in the report, we're allowing that time frame, and actually put it in the recommendation should make that more of a hard date. In my opinion, like I say, I'm not going to put forward for an amendment because it'll be a waste of everybody's time, but I wanted to make the point because we want to see this come to conclusion, and putting a date of by spring 2024 means it has to be by then or before, so it would support what Councillor Vilma Wilson did just say, but we'll leave it there.
I'm sure, Councillor Mrs. Wilson, that there will be every effort to do that, won't there, to bring it forward as soon as possible.
Chair, there certainly will.
Thank you. So we'll take that to, it's all been moved again. So we take item R7 then. I move it from the floor. Do I have a second? Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Sorry, on a point of order, the whole R1 to R7 were proposed by Councillor Mrs. Wilson, and I seconded R1 to R7.
Right, then we take the vote then that R7, the following conclusion of the market research engaging activity and structural survey options for the future operation of the Millwall Arts and Event Centre are presented back to the full council with a supporting business case. So all those in favour? Everybody, isn't it?
It's unanimous.
Thank you, members. Any against?
No, it's unanimous.
Any abstentions? That's been unanimously agreed. Right, can we move on?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. We've now been going for 2 hours, and I request that we have a small comfort break, please. Some of us need facilities.
I'm mindful of that, but I'm going to take, because of the time, because I'm going to have to go into another session in a minute asking for an extension. So if we're going to do this, then we're going to have to start researching for further time, because we're going to be extending. As long as you're aware of that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm a diabetic, so I need to actually have a comfort break. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm actually a diabetic, so I need a comfort break now. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take 5 minutes and then we'll come back. So the time now is 9:29. Members, the time now is 9:36 and I now reconvene this meeting. Now we're going back to the agenda and we're now going to have item 16, members of the public questions. And I will now invite Ms. Jill Waite to present her question to the leader. Push the button.
Thank you, Chairman, for granting me this opportunity to speak at full council and for speaking earlier in the evening. I appreciate that. So my question is to the leader in regard to item 9, which is the exempt report on the asset delivery programme. Councillor Mason, you personally have championed transparency and openness. On what basis do you believe the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information in the exempt report? Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Waite.
Now go for the extension. Go for the time extension now. Go for this.
Please can I ask for the council leader, Councillor John Mate?
I'm here. I know I'm short.
I had a child like you once.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Waite, I'm sorry not to be facing you, but the protocol is to face the chairman. Ms. Waite, thank you for your question, which rightly holds the joint administration to account on our pledges for openness and transparency. You will hear shortly in my introduction to the next item the reason why this item must be held in closed session. However, in response to your specific question, the council has received legal advice that the council's commercial position could be disadvantaged if the item is discussed in public, and therefore there is a distinct public interest in withholding disclosure at this point in the process. Thank you.
Well, before we go any further, I'm going to read this out to the meeting, and it's lasted roughly 2 hours. So, members, the meeting has now lasted roughly 2 hours. I would like to move a motion without notice, according to the council procedure, Rule 14N, to extend the meeting beyond the 2.5 hours for as long as necessary in order to complete the remaining business. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Mrs. Mason. Can those in favour please raise their hands? Thank you, members. Those against? Thank you, members. Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Right, there are 23 for the motion, 12 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, that motion is carried. We are extending. Sorry on. Councillor Mrs. McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. You said as long as it takes.
Yeah.
Hence I abstained.
Okay.
Because the first item's taken quite considerable time and there's several more on here. Is there no time limit?
No, in answer to that. Thank you. Members, I would now invite Councillor John Mason to speak on this item. Councillor Wood.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to refer to the Constitution 15.12, page 4.14, and I have a notice here that I would like to read out with your permission, please, Mr. Chairman. Under Part 4 of the Rochford District Council Constitution, Rules of Procedure, section 3.1, page 4.4, dated the 25th of January 2022, we, the undersigned, being Conservative members of the Rochford District Council, are calling for an extraordinary council meeting to be held as soon as it is reasonably practicable, with the intention to have, as the sole item on its agenda, item 9 on council agenda dated 7th of September 2023, namely the asset delivery programme, and consequently this item deferred until then. And the reasons for this are: the 402-page lengthy report relating to item 9 was issued late on Wednesday, the 30th of August. It is highly detailed and more time is needed for it to be read and understood, and reasonable time needs to be given to provide clarity on issues raised before important decisions are made. Also at that time, a number of members were on holiday during what is traditionally a holiday period in this country and for the council. My second point is the importance and complexity of the subject, and the desire, where possible, to achieve political consensus gives weight to it being a single item agenda where time permits for proper and thorough debate. The third point is, as a matter of good practice, we believe the report's content should be subject to pre-scrutiny, where questions can be researched and answered within a reasonable time frame, especially given the complexity of the subject and the significant impact any decisions made have on Rochford district residents. And my final point is, whilst respecting that some of the report content is commercially sensitive, we strongly disagree on this side, with the whole report being dealt with as an exempt item, including all of the recommendations, as well as under the relevant sections on exempting attendance by the press and public under the Local Government Act 1972, could be legally challenged, in this case by means of judicial review. In any event, we believe this is at significant variance with the principles of open governance, which should be, where at all possible, be seen to be concluded openly and in a transparent fashion. To do so otherwise creates the wrong perception in the minds of the residents we serve, and should consequently be avoided if at all possible. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I have 12 signatures to call for an extraordinary meeting. Would you like me to hand it to you now, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Wootton, for the opportunity to delve into some of the finer points of the Constitution. Chairman, my advice to you is that the requisition to call a meeting, an extraordinary meeting on its own, is valid, and that should be submitted to you. However, it's not valid to also add the deferral into that requisition. So the correct process would be to move a motion without notice under Procedure Rule 14, under 14, and there's a number of different options that we can use there. I can advise on that depending on what you want to achieve. And then if that motion to defer or to adjourn the meeting is then passed, the requisition to call the extraordinary then comes into play. So that's the advice, Chair. They can't be done in a single motion.
Councillor Wootton.
Mr. Chairman, it is 10:15 at night. We are just about to enter into debating a 402-page report with recommendations. Do you, in all honesty, consider that it is a reasonable request to have extended the meeting at all? It's just a simple point. I'm a simple chap, but I do have a bedtime, and I would like to get to bed because I, like a number of us in the morning, have to be up reasonably early. And I think it's just totally unreasonable to expect due process to take place over a 402-page report.
Is that a proposal then?
So we still don't have a proposal that the council can debate at this stage.
Yes, Councillor Wootton, we don't have a proposal as such on what to debate. So I mean, you made your point, but is there a proposal made here then?
I think I made it quite clear, Mr. Chairman. I'm proposing that we defer, and I would like to actually call an extraordinary meeting. If the technicalities of that need to be slightly reworded, there is the document with 12 signatures on it, which I think way exceeds the requirement for an extraordinary.
I understand that, but I just need a formal presentation so that someone can second it. Councillor Sperry, so we'll take a vote on whether we would go for your proposition. So, members, it's been proposed that we defer this to a special meeting to discuss and refer to the agenda items. Am I correct? Right. So all those in favour over this deferment, please indicate accordingly. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? One. Then members, there was 12 for, 23 against, and 1 abstention. Therefore, that proposition has been declared. So, Councillor Mr. Mason, we're back to you again.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure if I heard during Councillor Wotton's last address that there was a challenge to the proposal to place the meeting into exempt and excluding the press and public. Can that be? Can we please be reminded on what the challenge was, please? And then, when I've heard the challenge, I'd like to ask the monitoring officer to respond.
Councillor Wotton, you put the last recommended proposals forward.
Mr. Chairman, I think it best if I hand you the complete report and you can look at this. It's probably a little difficult for you on the stage, but it is actually the point 4 that I read out. But if I may, I'll hand it to you.
Members, just bear with us a couple of seconds while we read this.
Mr. Chairman, the proposal from Councillor Wotton essentially talks about the commercially sensitive parts of the report and a disagreement that the whole report needs to be dealt with in closed session. And there's a query that potentially the council could be subject to a judicial review should we erroneously go into closed session. Chairman, we have had legal advice that was very strong and told us that this debate should be taken in closed session to protect the interests of the council. I support that advice as your monitoring officer, and I urge the council to take that advice seriously. Chairman, you have the opportunity to vote on the exclusion of the public and press, and that's your point to demonstrate your disagreement if you disagree with that approach. And Chair, it would be unusual, I think, on a procedural point for the council to be legally challenged over that exclusion if it was duly made and duly voted on. Thank you, Chair. Okay, back to item 8.
So we'll go back to item 18 then. Thank you for that. And Mr. Mason, would you like to continue or would you have anything further to say?
No. No.
Mr.
Chairman, there are a number of other items on the agenda which the public can be in attendance. If we're going to ask the public to leave now, I think it's extremely unreasonable to expect them to have to wait outside while we go through this extremely lengthy document for this particular item. So can I suggest to you, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps those items that the public can stay are dealt with, and then the public then leaves and don't have to stand around waiting for us to debate 400 odd pages.
Mr. Steptoe, I take your point, but it isn't really a point of...
Steptoe, by the way,
Steptoe, I'll take your point, but it's not really a point of order. It's your opinion. So we'll go back to Mr. Mason again to... Look, I'm not going to go on with this. I've had advice from my monitoring officer who is well skilled and legally trained in all of this, and we've had legal advice on this matter, and we will now take it to a vote to go into extended session. So if I can come back to you, Mr. Mason, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chairman. I do want to say a few words before I move that we go to exclude the press and the public. Members, I'm sure like me, you would have very much hoped that this important debate on the future of our strategic assets could have been held in public session. However, we have received, as you've just heard, legal advice, which has advised us in the strongest terms to consider the whole of this report in closed session, as it contains sensitive commercial information. In order to protect this council's interests and ultimately those of our residents, I believe we must follow this advice. However, this joint administration made a commitment to open and transparent democracy, and I will personally ensure that the public are kept informed about our proposals as soon as it is possible to do so. On that basis, Chairman, I so move the exclusion of the press and public, the public and press, as printed under item 8 of the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Do I have a seconder to it? Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll second that.
Thank you. Now, members, we have a proposition to exclude the members of the public and press. Will all those in favour, please indicate. Thank you, members. Those against? Thank you, members. Any abstentions? 3. Thank you, members. Well, the vote is those for 24, those against 10, and 2 abstentions. We therefore now go for the exclusion of all members of the public and press from this room while we continue. And can I ask that the cameras be? Can I ask that the live stream cameras be prevented? But we'll keep the microphones on for the benefit of members and those for hearing.
Sorry, Chairman. Is it all right if I make my excuses? Thank you.
As long as we've got a quorum, I don't mind. We need a quorum, don't we, Sue?
Yeah.
Members, I propose that we readmit the public and press. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Thank you. Right. Can you restart the streaming? Thank you. Right. We'll now take agenda item 11, review of the Blood Advisory Committee. Emily, do you?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very quick with this introduction. Members, I think the report is self-explanatory. It proposes the dissolution of the Flood Advisory Group and the creation of a new flood working group with the remit described in the report. The proposal has been developed following a review by members of the existing Flood Advisory Group. That was a cross-party review, and I would like to thank those councillors and officers who were involved in undertaking that work. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions, and I would like to now hand over to you, Councillor Stanley, to propose the recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to recommend the Flood Advisory Group to be adopted by Rochford Council. Thank you.
So are you proposing all three recommendations?
Yes.
Okay. As a seconder? Councillor Mrs Mason?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose that the three recommendations are voted on en bloc and accepted. Thank you. And I'll second that.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions on this, so I won't keep you long. I don't really, don't worry. Can someone clarify the rationale for naming the appointees? I don't particularly have a problem, but normally we would say 3 members, and this then restricts us to 3 named members. This is the proposal. I can see Councillor Mrs Mason's going to answer, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, I will clarify that the flood working group has been working with those 3 members at the moment. So it's a continuation of the existing situation, which will change with the new council. So it's just to formally continue what's been going on for this year. And in May, it will then become a working group of one of the new committees, and the 3 members will then be appointed. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Steptoe?
Thank you, Chairman. Rochford District Council is not the lead flood authority in this particular case. It is actually Essex County Council. Can I ask, how are we going to be working with Essex County Council on this, particularly around enforcement, which is something that needs to be considered in getting various drains and things unblocked? How does that work, and where is the connection between the 2 organisations?
Councillor Stanley, do you want to reply to that?
Thank you, Chairman. Only yesterday, I was with the Essex County Council Flood Forum, consulting with them and advised them of our new situation that we've got, and they were more than happy to take our advice as well on the flooding in the area. We are working with Essex County Council as we are working with all of the councils, and that includes Basildon, Brentwood and everybody else in the way water is managed. Thank you.
Councillor Newport, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, and I don't know if I saw it in the report, the existing issues that the Flood Forum were dealing with, are they all going to be transferred over to the new working group to deal with and progress? Thank you.
Can I answer that, Mr. Chair? Sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I answer that? Yes, they will be passed over, but if you look at it, what we're doing at the moment, the the flood advisory group has not been effective, or should we say it's not been as effective as we would like. So the system has changed that where there's more focus on things where we can make a difference, but following up. So yes, they will initially go over, but eventually, hopefully they'll be resolved.
Councillor Steptoe, you want to do?
Yes, Chairman, I do apologise, I'm not sure if I made my question clear. Will Essex County Council be acting on behalf of Rochford District Council to carry out the enforcement, and have they agreed in principle to do that?
Councillor Stanley?
Thank you, Chairman. I believe that Essex County Council are the enforcement operatives that will do the enforcement. We are advisory group and we will advise as to where that work needs to be done and work with Essex County Council in enforcement if necessary. Thank you.
Councillor Esty, you want to say something?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. It says that it's going to meet bi-monthly, which is great. It says that it's going to be three permanent members, which is great. It says all councillors were invited to have an open invitation, but in the past, when it's been twice yearly, I've never known when it's happening. So how will that be advertised to all members? And how do we go about if we want to turn up? Will that be advertised? Tell us how to do that. Thanks.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Councillor FD. Yes, we're asking all councillors to involve themselves in the flooding areas that is appertaining to their areas, to bring it back to the advisory forum, and then we can deal with the matters, what is happening in their area. The idea is that we would prioritise areas that need to be worked on quicker rather than having a full documentary of every area all at the same time. If it is deemed to be a urgent case, then we will deal with that in the urgency that we need to with Essex County Council. I do hope that's answered your question.
Chairman, can I just come back to just for understanding? So if we have a problem, we get in touch with one of the three permanent members who will take it forward and we can just come and listen to see what happens. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Chairman. If you'd like to come back to any one of us, that's the reason why there's three. It mounts to be a better system and more collaboration with the ward councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So we've a good discussion there. So it's my intention, unless objections are there, to take all three recommendations in one vote. Are you all happy to do so?
Yeah.
All right, then the proposition is on the floor that we resolve these and vote on these motions. All those in favour? Unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we go on to item 12, I think it is.
In the absence of Joan Pearson, could I ask Nick?
I can't hear you.
In the absence of Joan Pearson, can we ask Nick, Councillor Nick Booth as Vice Chair?
Right. It says here that we'd like to ask Mrs. Joan McPherson, but she's left on this, to consider reports from the executive or other committee councillors. There are 4 reports. Agenda item 12.1, report of the Overall Scrutiny Committee. Mrs. McPherson is not here. Councillor McPherson is not here. So can I call upon, or I've got here, Councillor Stuart Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief as it's late at night. Probably the key document that we work to on ONS is the work plan, and the work plan last year was very dynamic. We had set areas that we investigated, but we actually brought forward a number of items at the request of general members and also members of the committee. A couple of pieces of work that I think the committee did really well was that we, in conjunction with the chief executive and with the then leader of the council, asked for a review, independent review of the ADP programme. And I think that worked really well. It was a good piece of work. Another piece that I'd like to highlight is in November, it was the report on the review of enforcement in Rochford District. And again, I'd like to thank Councillor Mrs McPherson and Councillor Mike Wilkinson for the work that they did in leading the task and finish group. And then finally, what I'd like to do is just say we had more external bodies that we got in, and that was through the hard work of Sonia and Veronica, making contact with these people and really trying to get them in. And then finally, I'd like to thank all the members who served on the committee, whether they were there as full-time members of the committee or as substitutes, and also the officers for their support as well. So that is my report, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions at this stage? Thank you. Right, members, there is one recommendation set in paragraph 1.2 on page 12.11 of the report, and that is to note the Overview and Scrutiny Committee annual report for the 2022 to 2023 municipal year. Is that noted, members?
Noted.
Thank you. Agenda item 12.12, report the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Treasury Management Annual Review. Mrs McPherson is in here, so
It's Nick.
who would that be?
Councillor Mason.
Councillor?
Booth.
Councillor Booth?
As Vice Chairman.
Down for you, you're Vice Chairman? Are you in a position to make a comment at the moment?
No, I don't feel I am.
Well, we haven't got anybody to put that view. Shall we defer that motion until the next council, or can we carry on?
You're not proposing it, so this isn't something that needs to be proposed. It's just if any member wants to talk to it.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Hoy?
It comes under my lead membership. I don't know, I mean, I'm aware of the Treasury Management document. I've reviewed the current one. I can comment on it if you want to, or if you need someone from ONS to do it, which I suspect is probably the case.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Councillor Hoy. I mean, I'm mindful just to take if everybody's, are okay with it, or if they've got any questions. I mean, it's up to you, really. If you feel you need to make a comment, by all means. Do you need to make a comment?
Councillor Mr. Wilson just said he's happy to make a comment, and he was chair of the committee for that year.
That's fair enough. In that case, then, if there's no other questions, then it's recommended that set out in paragraph 1.2 on page 12.31 of the report. That the local plan development scheme 2023 to 2025 are attached to the appendix 2. Oh, I've jumped ahead. God, I nearly got a vote on something else then. I nearly got something through. Right, members, I would like to, right, we've done all this anyway. Members, there is one recommendation set in paragraph 1.3 on page 12.21 of the report to note the contents of the Treasury Management 2022-2023 annual report. Members, is this noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Right. Agenda item 12.3, report of the Planning Policy Committee Local Plan Development Scheme 2023-2025. And I'd like to invite Councillor Jim Cripps to introduce his report.
Thank you, Chairman. The local development scheme is a formal document that sets out a forward timetable for the preparation of development plan documents and other core planning documents. This report consists of an update to the Council's local development scheme covering the period 23 to 25. The two recommendations, R1 is a single piece of paper, which is a bar chart showing the diagrammatically showing the way forward with what we're doing, and R2 is the actual paper document with the body of the information. So I'd like to propose that R1 and R2 are accepted for publication on the Council's website.
Councillor Newport?
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to second that.
Are there any questions? There'll be no questions, members. There, we've got a proposal on agenda item. And all those in favour? We had him up, right. Thank you, members. To the contrary? Any abstentions? One abstention. And that motion is carried.
Brilliant.
Where are we now? This one. Right, item 12.3, report of the Planning Policy Committee, Local Plan Development Scheme 2023-2001. I've just done that one.
No, you're at 12.4, darling.
Item 12.4, report of the Standards Committee Working Group. I'd like to invite Mrs Deborah Squires Coleman to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. At its meeting on the 22nd of August 2023, the Standards Committee was mindful that the composition of the Standards Committee Working Group and its terms of reference had not been revisited since the 12th of December 2017. It was therefore deemed appropriate to ask Council to consider a revised membership of the working group together with revised terms of reference. It is proposed that the Council resolves to appoint a cross-party Standards Committee working group consisting of Councillors Lawman, Linden and Sharp, and Councillor Sperring as the now named Conservative member. It is also proposed that the terms of reference for the working group be set as stated in the Standards Committee report. I now propose that this Council approve these recommendations.
I'd like to second that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Did you want to speak, Mrs Mason?
No, I'm just going to second it.
Right, any questions? Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll give this caveat. I don't mean this in a personal manner, but I note that you are down as a member of the committee. As chairman of the council, is that constitutionally correct? I seem to recall that when I was chairman and vice chairman, I was told I couldn't be on the Standards Committee.
Give us 2 minutes, will you, please, Mr. Steptoe?
Yep. I don't mean that personally, Councillor, but Chairman.
Chairman, I've just referred to the articles of the Constitution and I can't see any provisions that would prevent you from being a member of that committee or that working group. Thank you.
Just for clarity, could I just ask that if there was anything taking place, that I would be in a position of appeal or anything like this as a chairman? So if someone came back on it at any point. So I'll be basically free from any of those commitments. Thank you. Oh, sorry. You're right up back.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I did have a nod from Emily that I've been seen. I just want to raise item 1. It says cross-party. It has a member of, it has the chairman, has 2 Liberal Democrats and 1 Conservative. Our appointee to the Standards Committee was not able to attend that meeting and hasn't, in talking to her tonight, been asked to see if she wants to be part of the working group. So I'm a bit concerned that we as a group have effectively been excluded from that group. What can I ask why?
Councillor Mrs Mason.
My understanding of cross-party, and I'm sure the monitoring officer will correct me if I'm wrong, is that it has more than one party, not all parties. The Standard Committee wanted a small, effective committee. We also, Rochford District residents, don't have a representative on that working group. We don't have a problem with it. I do think that it's not a case of excluding someone. It's a case of inviting people that have got the time and the commitment to do the work. And it will be quite intense.
Mr. Boyd, Councillor Boyd, do you have a comment?
Sorry, I was expecting an answer from the chairman of the committee or the vice chair, but I'll accept Councillor Mrs. Mason's response as she's a member of the committee. I'm sure we might look at that later, but I'll leave that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are you happy to take these recommendations on block?
Yep.
Therefore, members, I would like to take the vote then. All those in favour of these recommendations? Thank you, members. Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? That recommendation has been approved. Now we're up to item 13, I hope. Item 13, a verbal update on the Constitutional Working Group, and I'd like to call and invite Councillor James Newport to provide to the Council a verbal update on the Constitution Working Group.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this is a verbal update, but I think I will distribute this to member services so they can pass it around to the Conservatives who have left prematurely. As Chairman of the Constitution Working Group, I am pleased to update members on the work we have undertaken so far to develop a proposal for a committee structure and to fully review the Constitution. So far, we have held 2 meetings and I've had our 3rd meeting scheduled for next week. The working group has already produced a proposed committee structure, which includes a number of regulatory committees, a scrutiny committee, and policy committees, and are developing the terms of reference for each of these committees. We have reviewed Part 2 of the Constitution, the articles, and have provided the monitoring officer with a steer to redraft Part 3 of the Constitution, responsibility for functions. This includes the schemes of officers' delegations. Chairman, the working group is on track to meet the deadlines set out by full council and in our work programme, namely that the committee structure will be brought before council for agreement in December 2023, and that the revised complete constitution will be brought forward for approval in February 2024. We will be considering how we engage and brief members on the proposals ahead of those meetings. This review is an intensive piece of work at pace, which requires a lot of input, both at the meetings and as homework. I would like to thank my fellow working group members for the time they've committed to this important piece of work and their valued contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for that. We'll now go on to item 14, business from last council meeting. There are no business held over the last one. No business over the last meeting. Item 15, report of the leader of the work of the executive, Councillor John Mason.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's important to recognise the amount of work that the executive are doing, and I am happy to give this report, and I will provide member services a copy tomorrow so that they can incorporate it to the minutes. Just to run through what's happening at the Executive Committee on the 21st of September, we're going to receive a report on Castle Hall, which is the remaining asset that we haven't attempted to discuss this evening, and there will be a business case. Quarterly budget monitoring, which of course will have been received initially by overview and scrutiny, but goes to the committee. The Modern Slavery Act review, environmental service plan, and some members will be very pleased to hear CCTV to Rayleigh report will be going to the 21st of September. On the 18th of October, we're already planning ahead. The voluntary sector grants cross-party members panel decision will be noted. There will be a proposal for Christmas parking. In other words, Christmas parking before Christmas as in previous years. And we will be hearing about proposals for 3 new skateboard facilities. And November, we will be hearing in a report about the development of 3G pitches. Some of the other work that the executive are doing hasn't got to the point of coming to report, Councillor Arthur Williams is working with the Customer Services Director, Sarah Bennett, on complaints handling procedures, and more particularly using complaints to generate service improvement. Preparation for the new leisure contract is going forward with consultants who are researching feasibility and procurement, and there will be a member workshop being organised by Councillor Julie Gooding. Councillor Michael Hoyle is organising the budget survey and the budget workshops, which will be participated in, or all members will be invited. The Planning Policy Committee, led by Jim Cripps, has undertaken a workshop to identify opportunities on brownfield sites. Almost finally, Rochford's By Your Side Cost of Living community event is on the 30th September, taking place here, Mill Arts and Events Centre, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Essex, we were going to have a member briefing on Essex devolution on the 11th of September, but the government's timetable has changed, and we will now be offered on a basis of Essex. Essex devolution briefings are being organised, and they're on the 14th and 22nd of September, and member services have been asked to communicate to all members how they may attend, I assume, on a hybrid meeting. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Members, is this noted? Is this report noted? Councillor Isley.
Just a question to Councillor Mr Mason. I've noticed on the key decision documents that they'll be signed off by officers. I don't quite understand that, because surely the executive, why aren't the members of the executive signing off on their bits of their portfolio, like I'm going back on memory, so I just tried to look them up, but the parking, I think, was signed off by one of the officers, and the other, each one was signed off by an officer. I remember looking at it and thinking, that's strange. I don't see why the executive aren't taking responsibility for it. But not there's much of responsibility, it's just making a decision.
Can I just remind that with any questions must relate to what the report that Councillor Mason has said.
He did mention key decisions.
I did not.
That's why I've raised it. Councillor Stepton.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mason mentioned there about the event here for cost of living issues. Will there be an event in the east of the district? Because it's been very difficult for the people that live in the east of the district to get here because of the cost of living.
I don't believe.
Chairman, I'd like to refer that to other members of the executive to answer. Councillor Julie Gooding in particular may wish to answer it, or Councillor Wilma Wilson might wish to, as indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the cost of living fare that's been put on here at Mill Hall, it's actually one of our community people that we work with, the Mega Centre, are putting that on, and they've hired Mill Hall to run that event. So, not being rude, Councillor Steptoe, but I don't feel qualified to speak on behalf of where the Mega Centre puts their events on. Sorry.
Is it relevant, Mr. Steptoe?
Yeah, Chairman. Could I ask the members of the lead team to perhaps try and consider to see if they can perhaps ask the Mega Centre to do something down the east side of the district, or something similar?
Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. We did have a briefing a couple of months ago from the voluntary services, and Vicky from RAVS said that there would be this type of event put all the way across the district. Be nice to have an update, or I can ask her for an update. Maybe she can let us know.
We'll call that a halt now, because we could only really follow the questions on clarity, so of what Councillor Mason has said. So I think we're getting a little bit individual on that here. So really, I'm satisfied with that. So there'll be no more questions on that. So, right. So, right. So members, is this noted? This report noted. Thank you. Right. Item 16, public questions and members are noticed. Now, this member has already been dealt with on an early agenda. Mrs. J. So that's that. Item 17, motions in notice. There are none. And therefore, this concludes the business of this meeting. And thank you all attending. The time now is 11:17. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Oh, of course I do, yes.
Oh, we will get up.
Please be upstanding whilst the Chairman, Councillor Jack Lawman, and our Chief Executive, Jonathan Stevenson, retire from the meeting.